It's me, Josh, again. I just want to encourage you today. And I want you to think about this little phrase. There's freedom in the fire. There's freedom in the fire. In Daniel chapter 3, I'm going to read you a scripture here in verse 21. It says, Then these men were bound in their coats and their hosen and their hat and other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Now these three men here, the reason they were cast in this furnace is the king had set up a golden image and they didn't bow down and worship it. They said, we're only going to worship the one true living God. And so this made the king mad and upset. So he commanded them to bind them, tie them up in everything that they were already wearing, and cast them into the fiery furnace. You know, we don't choose our circumstances sometimes. We don't choose the trials we go through or the hardships that we have to endure. These three men didn't choose to be put into the fiery furnace, but they found themselves there. But I want to encourage you. Verse 25 of that same chapter, in chapter 3 in Daniel, and this is the king, he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose and walking in the midst of the fire. They have no hurt, and the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Oh my goodness. That is awesome. There's a couple things I want you to understand here. One, God showed up. When you're faithful to Him, He'll be faithful to you. When you stand up for Him, He'll never leave you. He'll never forsake you. No matter what you go through, He said, I'll be there. You trust and believe in me, I'll be there. It may not seem like it, but I'm going to be there. It may not seem like it to these three men when they were being cast into the furnace. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do? This is it. This is where we die. But no, this is where God shows up in the midst of the trial, in the midst of the storm, in the midst of the fire that seems to be consuming us. But you see, they didn't stay tied up while they're in there. See, the king looked over and said, wait, there's 4 men loose walking around and they're not hurt. You know, in the midst of crisis, in the midst of a fire, God can keep us. He can keep us healthy. He can keep us from getting sick. He can keep us from harm. He can keep us from everything that the world throws at us. And I want you to think about this also. These men were bound when they went into the fire. So many times we are bound, maybe mentally, emotionally, physically. Maybe we have marital problems. Maybe it can be many things that seem to bind us and hold us back from our true potential. But God says, I love you and I don't want that for you. I want something greater for you. He says, I want to break those ties that bind. I want to break those chains that are holding you back. And I want you to be free. I want you to be free to worship me. I want you to be free to enjoy what I've blessed you with. And see, these 3 men were free in the midst of the fire. You see, in the midst of this distressing time in our nation and our world, we can still have peace. A peace that passes all understanding. A peace that nobody can explain. We can have that. We can have the freedom. He can break things that's been binding you for years. Maybe addictions. Maybe it's drugs, alcohol, pornography, adultery. He can break these things that seem to have a hold on you that you can't release. And in the midst of this trying and fiery time that we're going through, you can have peace and freedom. Just as these 3 men were free in the middle of the fire. They were free. They're the things that were holding them and binding them, the things that were tying them up, they were burnt off. But God showed up. And I love it because He showed off. He said, oh, let me show you what. You're going to stand up for me? There's not even going to be a smell of smoke when you leave this furnace. When they came out, He commanded that they be brought out. When they came out, not even the smell of smoke was on their garments. But when they came out of that furnace, when they came out of that fire, they were free. They weren't bound by the same things as they went in. They wasn't bound by those same ties that held them back before. But now they were free. So I challenge you. There's freedom in the fire. Trust God. He loves you. He cares for you. God bless you and have a great day.